My maternal grandfather hated me from birth, and my mother said it was because he thought having me made her life unnecessarily difficult because she already had one daughter and she didn't need to have another one. And then when I was born, looking the complete opposite of my brown-haired, brown-eyed, tan sister, I think it really sealed the deal on his loathing of me because I didn't even look like the granddaughter that he allowed my mother to have. And you're probably thinking that my mom was like a teenage parent who still lived with her parents when I was born, but no, my mother was a 35-year-old woman who lived in her own home with my father in a completely different state. But nevertheless, his hatred of me was everlasting and existed over state lines. To him, my complete existence was superfluous at best and offensively annoying at worst. So growing up, I was absolutely apparent that this man did not like me at all. But my mother had told me about one time when I was like 2 years old where he had like played with me for a minute and he'd sung me this silly song where he put my name into a song. And the song is completely ridiculous, but I still remember every single word of it because it was proof to me as a child that maybe he could like me. So I knew he didn't like me, but I was always trying to get him to see that like maybe Kate's not so bad. So one day on a family visit to my grandparents' house, I noticed that there was this row of these black boxes on a shelf in the living room. And they looked kind of like radios, but they had extra dials and extra buttons and more cords and stuff. So I was like, hey, first name, because I wasn't allowed to call him grandpa or anything like that. I was like, hey, like, what are these boxes? Hoping maybe I could ingratiate myself with him by taking an interest in, you know, something that was clearly a hobby or a collection to him. He paused for a very long moment and he like stared into my soul and he said, I have absolutely no interest in explaining that to you. And then he walked away. So fast forward 20 years, I'm at my grandmother's funeral and I'm talking to a longtime family friend of my grandparents, and he says something about my grandfather's obsession with ham radios. And I was like, ham radios? Because I'm not really familiar with the term. And he goes, yeah, you know, your grandfather's obsessed with ham radios. And I was like, I actually didn't know that. And he, like, his demeanor changes completely and he glares at me and he says, you know, as a grandchild, it's your responsibility to know these things about your grandfather. Suddenly, I have this, like, That's So Raven flashback to the day when I was a child, when I asked him about the black boxes. Ham radios, like they were obviously ham radios. And now 20 years later, I'm being vilified and admonished for not taking an interest in my grandfather's interest, except one time I did try to take an interest and I was humiliated. I'm not a therapist, but I think if I was, I would call this moment trauma on top of trauma.